Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Wrexham Legends Lounge podcast. I'm Andrew Pollard and joining me in a second is Gareth Owen. This is just me recording a little message as a heads up to say this is the first of 2 parts of this interview. The next part will be following next weekend. Next Sunday it'll be out. But this is the first part because we recorded this as one big chunk of an episode and it's brilliant. It's such a great chat that we have about Gaz's career and beyond. But it ended up running for like nearly 3 hours. It was 2.5 when I cut it down. So I thought, rather than put it out as one big chunk, because some people don't like that, I'll split up into 2, maybe more manageable parts. So this is part 1. Next week is part 2. It's really good. It's really fun. It's really entertaining. It's a little snippet, though, as well, of a song that Gaz has wrote called Roll Back the Years, which is, I guess, is written on the back of obviously the news of the takeover that we're in that we've gone through now, and it's just just a song that stirs the emotions, that looks at some of the highs and the lows of being a Wrexham fan, I guess, to put it bluntly. But yeah, the full song will be played at the end of this podcast. But for now, here's a little snippet of that, and then we'll get into the part 1 of this chat. Thanks for listening.
Hold on to it, feel it belongs above. So cherish it and bleed it, 'cause it's a club we love. Days and all of our pain, we bathed in sunshine, but we felt the rain. All of the heartaches and all of the tears, I watched them fade away. As we roll back the years, we roll back the years.
Speak their names with pride forever, marching with a mighty army, Wrexham.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Wrexham Legends Lounge podcast with myself, Andrew Pollard. And joining me today is Gareth Owen. Gareth Owen with nearly thereabouts 300 games under his belt for Wrexham. 12 years in the first team squad, involved in the Cup Winners' Cup games against Lyngby, Man United in 1990, the Arsenal and West Ham FA Cup games 92, the promotion 92-93, the FA Cup games against Ipswich and Man United 94-95, the FA Cup run in 96-97, the so nearly in the playoffs teams in 96-97 and 97-98. And so much more. I told you it was going to be a long intro there, I guess. So how are you doing? First and foremost.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Yeah, thanks for having us. Obviously, it's a pleasure to be talking to you, and that went much better than you did in your rehearsal. You took about 10 seconds there. It took you 35 seconds in your rehearsal. But yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's cheers for joining us. It's it's a huge honor to get to sit down and talk about the good stuff with yourself. Before we get going, I should probably say that the 4 previous episodes are all now available on YouTube at Wrexham Legends, or on Spotify, iTunes, Tuner, Stitcher, whatever, Google Podcasts, all of those things, just by searching the Wrexham Legends podcast. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, a comment, a follow, a review, anything, just to raise the profile of this. Neil Wainwright was on in episode 3, Mark Cartwright episode 4, Mark McGregor episode 1, and John P.D. Morris, the man behind the Wrexham Legends episode 2. This is the Wrexham Legends, a group of former players who get together to raise money for local teams, local charities, raise awareness of stuff, do some really great work, and we'll hopefully get back to playing before the year's out. But no, in association with Hill Street Social, episode 5, Gareth Owen. So you were, from what I'm aware, you were 18 when you get into the first team, or thereabouts. How was that to get in there so young? Because now at our level, well, with Wrexham, it's rare that we see, I guess, a kid getting into the team now. But yeah, 18, get first team football.
Yeah, brilliant. Dixie obviously gave me my first taste, I suppose. Put Maddock away in the Welsh Cup. So the first time I stepped out for the first team was there with 4-1 up. I think I went on for the last 10 minutes. So, but an invaluable experience, even there. And then, I mean, around that time, we saw Dixie sort of leave the club. Brian Flynn step up from player to player manager or player coach at the time, I think, before taking the actual manager's role and stepping back from things then. But as an 18-year-old, very, very lucky, very humbled. Can't tell you how sort of excited I was as well to play for what I regarded as my hometown club. Then obviously Wrexham being closest to Connah's Quay. really lucky, as I say, to have the players around us that I had at the time. And you think back then, it was the Jeff Hunter, Sean Reck, Neil Salathi, all I always remember, Joey, obviously, John Bowden, Mike Salmon, amongst others. Fantastic people as well as players. So fortunate to have been brought up and nurtured by people like that. The values they had at the time. Obviously, Joey's massive influence on many of the 90s players' careers. But I'd have to say that a lot of the pros at the time were fantastic people. Nigel Beaumont as well, Andy Thack, later on, Graham Cooper. Them types of players are sort of, I can't stress how important it is as a young player to have those type of people around you. And when you're coming through, breaking into the first team, I was also very lucky to have a good circle of not just teammates but friends as YTSs. Then you've got to go back from the first team into that group at some point, and they ripped me to bits, mate. It was big time this, big time that now, and you can't go from the first team and come back, sort of thing. You've got to stay there. But yeah, they ripped into me as you can imagine, and I got treated exactly the same, which was brilliant. There's still boot polish everywhere, and I won't go into some of the things that went on back in the day, but brilliant set of lads as well that I came through with at 18. So yeah, very, very lucky.
Yeah, well, because like you said, you're a local lad from Connors Quay. When did you end up in the Wrexham system? Because it was 18. You got into the first team squad, and like you said, dropped back down to the YTS lads as well again. But when did you first get into the system?
First, I think schoolboy forms. I suppose at 14, 15 years of age. I was at I can't say it. What's it called? The team club up the road. I was there anyway with Cliff. And Cliff got moved over to Wrexham. Won't go into depth about it, but he came over to Wrexham. Cliff Sear, God rest his soul, with Mike Buxton with him. Nice time for schoolboy forms then. With others as well. Paul Barker came over, David Gorman, I believe. Both came over from the sort of Chester area. So yeah, signed as a schoolboy. I can't remember if it was 14 or 15, but I had a good couple of years. Then we used to train on the car park at the time, there was just over the fence where the car park is now at the club there used to be like 2 mobiles, and it was just fields there where the Astro is now, or and Glendower is obviously. It was just fields there. So yeah, we train on there as schoolboys, and then fortunate enough to be offered YTS forms at 17. Spent 2 years as a YT then, so I'd already been at the club sort of 4 or 5 years by the time I broke into the first team, and then at 18 got into the first team, and I the best, what I regard as the best footballing years of my life. Obviously, I don't. If you speak to Gemma, I didn't play for any other club but Wrexham. I know I went to Doncaster, but Airbus and what have you. she doesn't sort of acknowledge them. But 12 years as a pro there was it was fantastic times, and loved every second of it.
So basically, to your wife, you retired in like 2001. That was it.
Yeah.
What was it? Because it was, as a fan, looking back at it now, it's nuts to think of the homegrown talent that would come through on a regular basis. There was yourself. There was say Wayne Phillips, Steve Watkin, Chris Armstrong when he was at Fly coming through. Lee Jones, Phil Hardy, who came through in the system, obviously was from Liverpool but came through early on. Mark McGregor. There was just this, again, like a conveyor belt of young talent. Why do you think that was? It's crazy now to think of a Wrexham side or any side that would be made up of, say, 5, 6, 7 of the starters would be all local to the area or within, say, 10 miles.
Yeah. I think obviously a strong scouting system at the time was prevalent at the forefront of that. A great network of people that were out watching games regularly. Good talent ID group that brought all these players to the club. But again, they were brilliant people. And once I played for Cliff at 14, I'd gone wherever he wanted to go. Wherever Cliff went, I wanted to play for Cliff. So yeah, I think that coupled with Dixie, first of all, giving people their opportunity, at such a young age, and putting trust in you as a young person to go out and do a job for him. Same then with Brian. Again, the trust they had in youth was second to none. And I'm not saying that's not there now. We've got some brilliant players within the Centre of Excellence. It's been proven, over the last 5 to 10 years. But the game's changed now, and the rules are different, and things are different. Full stop. So we're losing players. Our status has dropped, if you like, from being obviously a established league club into the National League, and you're naturally then going to lose players, and it's going to be tougher to attract players to the club. So Dan's doing a brilliant job there. I know he is, Dan Nolan, at the club. Trying to re-establish, establish or trying to make sure those young players stay within the club. But I know how difficult it is. It's really tough. But yeah, it was as you say, conveyor belt at the time, wasn't it? And you've named a lot there that came through, and I was just one of them. I look back at that as that. I was just one of many players that come through at the time, and hats off to the people that were doing the work at the time. They did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, we had like the centre of excellence. There was the reserve team, which I think not having a reserve team is a massive blow on that. Just because there isn't that link. So unless you're really, really good at 17, 18, you're not going to get that chance of first team football or to learn to get ready for first team football. So you're just going to be playing youth football. And I mean, obviously you can send players out on loan to maybe the Welsh Premier League or the Welsh football pyramid, as we've done in years. But it just feels like that's something that's really missing. And also for like as fans, I talked about this to Mark Cartwright about how it was really good to, when you go to games back then and you get a program and you'd look for the reserve games and you look for you'd see these names and you see you'd be scoring. One I'd mentioned to Mark was Paul Roberts, who was getting kind of 5 a game in the reserves when he came from Portmaddock and never quite got his chance in the first team. But you'd see like Andy Morrell would be bagging a hat trick a game, or you see like a young Neil Roberts coming through, or maybe players that didn't quite make it, like a Paul Mazzarella or Lewis Cody. But you were aware of who was in the system, who was in the club, and who could be getting a first team football at some point. But there isn't any of that now. So I don't know. Hopefully we get that back. But what would you make of it as a young player then? If there isn't that gateway to the first team, there's just, right, you play youth football, and then if you're good enough for the first team, you are. If you're not, there's no, it seems like there's a stage of development missing almost.
Yeah, the gap's so much bigger then. And that could have well happened to many of the players you mentioned already, that they go in the first team, and the manager at the time feels, you're not ready, and you drop back down again. You never get that chance to go up again. But you're absolutely spot on, Andy, that gap was always filled there. I'd say the biggest thing for us at the club at the time, and I'm talking now as a 17, 18-year-old boy in the YTS scheme, and I speak to many of the lads that were involved at this, they say the same thing. So playing in the Welsh National League against hardened men, I'm not joking now, there was some tough teams, as a young boy, a Wrexham, up and coming player or whatever, coming out into where I live now in Ponky Banks, or I'm actually in Roast, but Roast D is just Roast Elwood is just around the corner. Kevin at the time going and playing Druids wasn't the same as it is now. It was the pitch wasn't great, and I'll never forget going to the likes of Fly Welfare and playing against Chris and getting smashed by the lad that played in midfield was even smaller than me, but he 2-footed me, and if you get up and let them know you're hurt, then you won't survive in that. So it really was sort of sink or swim. But playing in that local league was invaluable to my experience, because if you're receiving the ball from a centre back, if you don't glance over your shoulder, you're going to get smashed from behind. So you've got to glance, you've got to make sure you're turning right, you have to make double sure of everything and look after yourself. And I probably say that, you talk to Neil, you talk to Phil, Stevie Watkin, Wayne, any of that group, they will all say they become men overnight, playing in that league. Coupled to your first team experience of playing, maybe a 5-game burst or a 10-game burst, and then coming back and playing in the reserves. However that worked, it worked so well at the time. It was managed really well at the time by the people as well. You've got to manage, Neil coming into the first team. You've got to manage him going back, because and making sure that they don't treat him any different. He's treated exactly the same as he was before he played up, or doesn't get treated different in the first team. It's always, look, this is how it is here, and you have to adapt then as a young player into those two different environments as well, which I think is important. So yeah, that Welsh National League, and the other thing was the Midland Senior League was brilliant at the time as well. We played in that league, which was Walsall, Birmingham, Port Vale, Stoke. All these teams had reserve teams at the time. Yeah. So you could be 16, 17-year-old, maybe even a schoolboy, getting into that team that goes away in midweek on a Wednesday, plays a game. Flinny's there, Kev's there, Joey will watch them games. Joey used to take a lot of the games, but then the manager could see you, whether you're impressing in those games. What's his attitude like on a Saturday playing against apply welfare away.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see how he does Tuesday night in the Leyland Daft Cup against Blackpool at home, which is, you know, how it worked out, I suppose. But though, yeah, as you said earlier on, that mechanism between YTS and first team had huge support around it at the time, and you know, the sooner we can get back to that, the better.
Yeah, I think that's one of the. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of elements on the table with the takeover of Wrexham now, where there's so many things that fans are hoping for. Me, first and foremost, I just want to get up the National League. I'm not getting ahead of that, but one of the big ones is that people want to see the reserve team come back, and hopefully that happens. Because I mean, I don't know if lucky is the right word. But you were around at the time when you could get that chance. You had that kind of that foot into the first team where they've seen you play men's football. And that means you get your chance against teams like Lyngby and Man United in the Cup Winners' Cup, as it would be back then. Which is still, it kind of pains me that that's not around today. Like, none of this Europa League. I want a UEFA Cup. I want a Cup Winners' Cup. But that's another rant for another day. But how was it? Because if I'm right, you're a Man United fan as well as obviously a Wrexham fan.
Yeah. Liverpool, believe it or not, from when I can remember first supporting the team. In fact, I'll tell a lie. I was probably my brother took me to Everton. My eldest brother took me to Everton Forest. It was, you're probably talking 1980, 81. Prior to that, I was probably Liverpool. But yeah, Liverpool beat United, I think, in the 77 Cup FA Cup final. I think, if I remember rightly, Liverpool were winning everything at the time in the late 70s. I thought, you know what, I don't want to be someone that's just jumping on a bandwagon, right? What's around? Looked at, and then Brian Robson took over my life. Frank Stapleton took over my life, and I became a United fan from probably 1980 onwards. Yeah.
I'd say that's. I mean, obviously today, Man United they won a title for, I think it's 8 seasons, whatever. Even if they look like they're going to be second this year, but it's crazy for people who weren't around, who maybe aren't as old as myself or yourself, to say that there was a time when Man United was struggling, and that was that time, because people just think of Man United as this powerhouse under Alex Ferguson, where they were winning leagues and European Cups and leagues and European Cups. And even Fergie had his rough few years originally. But yeah, there was a time when Man United, it would be, if you were looking for a team that weren't, if you're looking for an alternative to Liverpool who were winning everything, and you're looking for somebody that kind of like, almost like a plucky underdog who you wanted to see return to greatness, that would be them at that point in time. I guess Brian Robson was a huge part of starting to turn that around. Well, with yourself then, now you mentioned Brian Robson, is that someone you maybe moulded yourself on a little bit? Captain Marvel, as it were?
I probably subconsciously, yes, maybe, just the way I think he was combative. I think he liked, he was competitive. He got about the pitch really well, used the ball really well, I think, as a player, and he liked the tackle. He set a tone, I think, for United, which was important, and they always seem to have that type of player, over the years, that the great United sides. You look at Keane, obviously, and then the balance of that, maybe a Scholes in there playing as a 10, or in two different wingers either side of Giggs on one side, who would get to a byline with his pace and cross the ball from the byline, where Beckham was a little bit more, I'd receive it deep and cross from deep. It was such a good balance to those United sides. But going back to that Robson era, early to mid 80s, so the team at the time, Gary Bailey in goal. I think the two centre halves, you look at Kevin Moran and who else was in that side? Robson, Stapleton.
You have Steve Coppell at that point still. Would it be on the wing?
Yeah, a bit later than that. I think Steve Coppell a bit earlier than that. So the team I sort of watched was a bit later than that. And then Mark Hughes and and then obviously Fergie took over in 96, was it 97, something like that. But yeah, even in that period from 80 to 95, I was a avid watcher. I'd go to Old Trafford, but me and my brother would go. My next up brother Chris, we'd go and stand on the Stretford end there, where you could stand. In 10 years, you're running out, pinching yourself in a Cup Winners' Cup game against them in the early 90s, which was, I will come to that, no doubt. But I was a big United fan, and obviously still am, and it's I still pinch myself to this day now that they came over to Wrexham for the testimonial in 2001.
That says a lot about you. But I'm just thinking of that team now, because it'd be, I guess, if Anderson would be there at that point in time, maybe, would it be? And Neil Webb,
right back, if you remember. Arthur Alberston, left back. Right back.
Norman Whiteside.
Demi Moses in midfield. Norman Whiteside. Yeah. That was the sort of era. Colin Gibson, I think, on the left. Mark Hughes, I think Brian McClare was a bit later, to be fair.
Yeah, it was like
But
a young Mark Hughes when he was playing like midfield, like box to box midfield. Then he went up front. Then he got his move to Barcelona on loan to Bayern Munich, then back to Man United.
That's right, yeah.
It's just I almost feel this isn't going to be a Man United loving, but I almost feel with Brian Robson that you kind of almost wish that he was a couple of years younger, so he got more of that success when it did kick in. Because he got the first 2 league titles, and I think the second one he played maybe about 2 games or something like that. And obviously 1993, he was in and out of the team because it was Paul Ince was the main man, and Roy Keane had come in that summer. And you feel like with the career that Brian Robson had and the player he was and the status he's got with Man United, you would just like to have seen him maybe, like I said, if he was maybe 2 or 3 years younger, so he could have got another 2 or 3 more years of being in that top team. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Football,
yeah, exactly.
Bloody hell.
Hey, you chose a career in this one, mate. But with that Man United game and that the Lyngby games as well, these big European nights, it's crazy to think about Wrexham playing in Europe for a lot of people anyway. We were talking before about some fans who they've never seen league football, and there was a time when we were playing European football, which no other clubs at our level would get. And most clubs in the Premier League don't get the chance to play European football, but because of the Welsh Cup as it was then, we could, if we won that, we get into the Cup in this Cup and work our way through. But how is that involved to be? I mean, did you realise at the time how special it was for a player in the 3rd division, 4th division it would be then, to be playing European football? Did that, or was that just the norm? Because that's always what it's been at Wrexham up until then. Yeah,
but probably a bit of both. I think you probably didn't focus or didn't look at it as a player back then and think, oh my God, you're going to look back at this in 20, 30 years time and think, wow. It was sort of the norm as a club, because I'd looked at the club from my first visit to Wrexham was with my old school teacher, God rest his soul, Wyn Jones, who was a scout for Wrexham. 1984, I think, and he brought me up to the ground, met Mel Sutton, I think was in charge at the time. I may be wrong there. I remember walking into the office and I'm sure it was Mel Sutton, but like walked into the change room, Dixie was in there, Wayne Sigelski, probably Joey would have been there maybe, amongst others. And it was the first time I got signatures, so I've come away from that as a schoolboy and yeah, it's crazy going, that was 1984 probably, and then signing as a pro in 1990, I suppose, 89, 90. It was always strange, like you always think something was meant to be, but I sort of fell in love with Wrexham Football Club, I think, a little bit on that day in 1984, walking out of there with my signatures under my arm, with a couple of programmes that the lads had signed as well, and just the first experience of probably, a real football club. Yeah,
it's brilliant. I think that's, I really don't know if young fans do that anymore, but like back in the day with me and my mates, we were 11, 12, 13 going. That was it. You rush and get the signatures of everybody, or even like some of the away players. If like they were big name players, you'd be rushing over to get his name. And I think it was Neil Lennon one time at Crewe, where it's like, okay, they are amongst all the Wrexham players, like the big cup games. Like I remember Florin Radichoiu, Romanian striker, playing for West Ham when they came for the snow game, and it was. I loved him from the 94 World Cup, so it was like, oh, yeah, mate. But I don't know if fans still do that, where they get the whole signatures thing, the programme things. I don't know if it's maybe a different era now, or you get in the middle of the programme at one point, there was like a profile on a certain player, and there'd be the information, the questions on one side, the other page would be just a kind of full-on face thing, and you'd always get that signed and you put it on your wall or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm dating myself now really badly.
No, there was a lot at the time. I think I think I fell in with Subbuteo at the time. I was a massive Subbuteo fan. League Ladders, you're probably a bit young for League Ladders, but
I am.
League Ladders was like, it was just a little tab, right? It was a colour, so a yellow or blue or whatever, and it was close to the team colour.
Yeah.
All 4 divisions, and all so 1 to 24 was like a little slot, and you put the tab. So Colchester United would go in League 4, slot 18, at whatever position they were. So you could move the leagues around based on where they were in the league on that Saturday. So you'd spend Saturday night, would be out, or CFAX had come on. You'd look at the results and you'd move all your league ladders around. And you get Studio out on a Sunday, iron your pitch. If you're lucky, get the fence around the outside, play. So every single thing you did was football based. You'd be out for, oh my God, mate, every hour God sent. At the time, out on the pitch, your Christmas presents were all a new ball, gloves. I remember getting gloves.
Yeah.
You must remember the old yellow gloves with the green pads on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like a set from a catalogue, a case catalogue or something, ball and gloves. Yeah, everything you did, you lived and breathed it, didn't you? And you spent every waking hour sort of thinking about football. And I think you've got to be like that. I mean, if you're going to go on and be I was looking to obviously be a professional. I think you've got to be wired that way to be, obsessed with it. Just touching on it, you mentioned European games before as well. I didn't really answer it, I suppose. As a young player, yeah, the experience that you get from them, you just can't sort of bottle it. I can't tell you what it's like to walk out in front of, it wasn't a massive crowd at Lyngby, but with my teammates, but mates as well. You're going into a game against a team from another nation was crazy. And obviously then early 90s, I know we'll probably come on to United again, but I think we played them in the Cup Winners' Cup in 91, if I'm right. Statos might correct me.
I think it was the 1990-91 season, but it was right at the end of 90, like December 1990. So not far off.
Yeah. December, probably in the first round, the qualifying round or first round, or whatever it was, the Cup Winners' Cup. I think it was 33,000 there at Old Trafford. Do you remember the rules at the time where you could only have
the foreigners, wasn't it? 3 foreigners. That rule, yeah.
You could only have sort of three players from outside of Wales in your squads. I think we went with Andy. I might be wrong. Garth played. Nigel Beaumont. Coops played. So Graham Cooper. Can't remember who the third one was. Sorry, but yeah, it was our bench was made up of our YTS boys. I say that as a 18, 19-year-old. It was the second year pro, but we had Jamie Williams, I think Phil Middleton, and a couple of others on the bench. Andy Thomas probably on the bench. So yeah, that the petrol game then as well. Play Este away.
Oh God, yeah.
I pronounced that right. Yeah, we lost 1-0. It was probably the warmest weather I've ever played in. That'd have been, was that
95, I think. Yeah,
later,
I think it was 95. That was our last kind of European foray, because it was I remember going to the home game. I've still got the programme somewhere. It's got Darren on the front, Darren Brace with maybe the Welsh Cup. And it was one of, I might be remembering it wrong, but in my head it was one of the dullest games I'd ever seen on a Tuesday night, I think it was, and then obviously 0-0 and go away and lose 1-0.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. Obviously we didn't progress then, but you're beating Lyngby. You never dream that you're going to draw United in the next round. We all what happens. We stay. I think you've got to stay in the nation, haven't you? 24 hours before the game. So we stayed in Altrincham the night before, if I remember rightly. Great night. Obviously we'll probably come on to the FA Cup game and that later on. But as a young boy, wow, what an experience, and pretty unique, I suppose, within a football club, as you said before, who in maybe world football, in the lower divisions, is representing the nation, as many times as we did at the time, winning the Welsh Cup, and obviously Cardiff, Swansea as well, amongst others. But yeah, we have got a unique history, and obviously we're very proud of it, aren't we?
Yeah, so much history. Third oldest professional club in the world. The fact that it's crazy to think of any team around the world being in their respective third or fourth division and playing European football for that nation. It's nuts to think about. But just to touch on like the program signing and stuff, how was it for you to go from that person who went to the racecourse as a 13, 14-year-old, whatever, saw Mel Sutton, got the signed programs from all the players, to then skip ahead a few years and you're coming out to warm up whatever before a game, and you get that first time with a fan going like, guys, with the program and the pen and the marker.
Oh, you just can't. You can't get your head right. What do you want? You want me to sign a piece of paper for you? You just can't comprehend it really. It's something, if you ask all the lads, you then end up. I used to love doing presentation nights at the night, because presentation nights at the time, purely because I remember Kevin Ratcliffe coming to Deeside primary schools, for example, and Kevin Ratcliffe, it was at Everton at the time, was a Welsh international. And I was a local boy, I suppose, from Wrexham, so you get asked the Flintshire Junior League that I used to play in. It was great to have, you might have 8, 9, 10 lined up at the end of the seasons when you're, a young pro, and it's great to sort of give something back. But just being around kids that wanted, to be that next pro was brilliant, and you'd always try and give them some advice. Or so it was a bit surreal, I suppose. You ask any pro It's very surreal having people coming up to you, or you know, are you going to an away game or someone's asking you to sign something, or yeah, it's really strange. But then we had Ian Rush for a period, and now that is now he signed some things, I will tell you.
I was watching before I saw Mark Carey for the last episode, which is available on all the usual platforms. Throw that in there to find. And it was a really good chat with Mark. It was a long one. It was like nearly 2 hours, but it's well worth it. Just a really interesting story of low league goalkeeper to football agent to technical director at Stoke in the Premier League. It's now working with the FA. But it was before speaking to him. It was I went back and watched some old videos, and I just ended up in like when you fall in that almost like black hole of YouTube, where it's like you go from one video to the next video. And I'd gone through the 98-99 season, and then you pick up on Ian Rush signing, and just the hysteria around it at the time was nuts. And I mean, God love Rushy, but there's like an interview with him, and he's talking about in the future he's got plans to manage Juventus and Liverpool, and didn't quite work out like that for him. But it was just insane to see him come from, it's been like Liverpool to Newcastle, then Leeds, I think it was. I think he had a brief stop at Sheffield United, and then he came to drop down to Wrexham. But what was that like? Because obviously there's loads to get through before we get to the Rushy part. But just while we're on that, what was it like to have Rushy come into the because it was player coach at the time. So when he was on the pitch, he was on the sidelines. You could see he's trying to be very vocal and encouraging to the players.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough as an under 21 player. I think I had 10, maybe 10, 11 caps at the time, but been in and around the squads, and sort of, because he was a Flint lad, I was Connor's key. You know, we chat, I wouldn't say regularly, but you know, we got to sort of know each other. And the first team at the time within that squad were brilliant as well. Kevin Ratcliffe was very similar. And I'll tell you a story about Gary Speed, God rest his soul, a bit later as well, who made you so welcoming in and around the Welsh squads. But yeah, him signing, the euphoria of such a name, you know, writing on that dotted line for Wrexham Football Club was crazy. There was a rumour, I think, at the time around the Welsh squads. They went and played in China at the time, I think, and he got to China and brought his passport with him, but they let him in anyway because obviously he was so famous. Yeah, I'm going back to 1990 then. That probably wouldn't happen nowadays, but they let him in obviously because he recognised who he was through his Liverpool days, and obviously Wales. But yeah, going to away games, I'll never forget getting off a coach. The amount of people doubled, trebled, quadrupled overnight that was coming to meet us wherever the away games, and the coaches, because they knew he was getting off the bus with us, you know, at some point. So you'd always try and get to the back of the queue or get off before him. If you got off before him, you know, you get into the change room. If you got off after him, you could be half an hour just stood there leaning on a chair while he signed.
Anybody want my autograph? No. All right, okay. Cheers, Rushy.
Oh yeah, you just sort of slide down the side like. You want me to sign? Oh no! Oh, Rushy's behind me. Right?
You want me to ask Rushy for you?
Can I have your autograph? Oh yeah. Oh no, Rushy, you want right? Yeah, it was surreal, and yeah, it didn't work out for him as a player, but he was you know, a meter, 2 seconds ahead of us all in his mind in terms of what he wanted, which is really difficult as a player. So I think as a coach educator now, I think I admire that he came and he was patient. He didn't sort of get frustrated himself. He didn't get frustrated with the lack of quality around him in comparison to him. He got on with it, which says a lot about him. Very humble. You know, we find that out a lot of. You've probably seen some of the names that have come on the FAW courses over the years. We've been very, very lucky, and the higher they've played, the more humble they are. There's got to be something tied into that. I believe in why players play so high, and he was the epitome of humbleness. He was. As I said, he'd sign things until it was going dark. He was a nightmare because you never leave an away ground on time.
Why do you think it didn't quite click as a player? Because it was, I think in total, including the Cups, it was like 24, 25 games he played, but didn't score. And obviously, Wrexham fans, one of the all-time great strikers coming to the club, a Welsh icon, scored so many for Liverpool, won whatever with Liverpool. And everybody thought like, oh my God, we've got Ian Rush coming. That's it. It's going to be back in 30th season. But obviously it didn't quite work out. He didn't score. But what do you think, why that didn't quite click? Was it maybe just, I don't know, he didn't quite have the pace he was to play on that last shoulder? He was playing sometimes on the wing, or do you think it was just that disconnect with him and the players?
I don't think it was the plan. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Flinney was very, very bright. And he probably would have laid out to Rush, you know, this is what I want you to do coming into the club. And I think Rush, he was brought in probably more to bring players on, to have an order around him. Maybe as a player, I distinctively remember in games, opposition players, if you were going forward, you'd have the ball, you'd look up, the opposition players would, if Rushy was ahead of you, they'd get around him closely, right, which leaves space elsewhere, obviously. So he was a decoy a lot of the time, which I don't mean that disrespectfully. You know where I'm coming from.
Yeah. He takes that focus away. The attention's all on him, and it frees up other players.
That it would drag players towards him, which gives you so much space elsewhere, which is a massive plus for a team. As a person, I think as well, he was just again in that mould of just brought others, got the best out of others. So I don't think it was ever in the plan to play on the last shoulder of the last centre half and do what he did at Liverpool and do what he did successfully for Wales as well. I think it was more. I think Flinney thought a little bit deeper than that and wanted that type of person and player to bring others on and to get the best out of other players. And and also just to maybe raise the profile of the club as well at the same time. You know, it was fantastic for the club to get such a coup. And I think for the whole, for the fans at the time, the club, everything was just lifted by his signing. You know, and sometimes it works out a little bit differently than you planned. Played in midfield a lot, but I learned so much off him as a midfielder. And you're talking about a player here that spent his career breaking nets, and all of a sudden you're learning off him as a midfielder and add into your own game, which ultimately I think that was probably the bigger picture for Brian Flynn.
And speaking of you playing the midfield in the centre of the park, you started centre of the park in that famous Arsenal game, the FA Cup, which bringing it all back, because I've said this before we started going, there's going to be so many things I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to forget something because it's just 12 years as a pro, all these big moments. But to wind it back a little bit, the Arsenal FA Cup game cannot be not talked about. And you're there, I guess at that point you might have turned 20 by then, possibly. And I looked into it. This is an Arsenal team that had 7 England internationals in it. There's David Seaman in nets, there's Paul Merson playing, Tony Adams, David O'Leary, Irish centre-half at the time, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, Alan Smith, David Rocastle, what a player he was. All these star names against plucky old Wrexham, who technically, in normal circumstances, would have been relegated the season before, just with the rejig of the league that worked out very well for us. How was that to be playing to be starting as a 20-year-old against these superstars? Because obviously you'd already played the Man United game a year before that, but this was the league champions Arsenal as well, though. This wasn't just any old Arsenal; it was a great Arsenal side.
Yeah, you're probably quite naive still as a younger 19, 20-year-old pro, which is a good thing. You're going onto a pitch with the league champions. You're obviously aware of what they can do. You're aware that they're lined and laced with international players. What I will say about the lads that sort of the young players, particularly in the time that team at the time, Wacko, Phil at left back, obviously as well. I can't remember whether did Wayne start that game. I'm not too sure. But that group of players, we were all quite wired in the way that we didn't really care who we were playing against. I don't mean that disrespectfully.
No fear sort of thing.
We had a really good belief in each other, and I suppose that's why we were the 90s teams were fairly successful at the time, was we had a really good no fear attitude. We believed in what we did. We were band of brothers, I suppose, that grew up. The 90s teams, as you know now, we're still mates, a lot of us, which doesn't happen at a lot of other clubs. A lot of the players that went through that sort of 90s phase went off to other clubs, but they all seem to hover around Wrexham still, and we're all still a good group of mates, from that period. So, that no fear attitude is important going into that game. I think I had a chance after about 20 minutes or so where ball went down the left. I can't remember who crossed it, but it was I was about 12 yards out, but it's going to cross me. But I sort of stretched and took a touch, and the ball's gone straight up in the air, and everything went into slow motion. So the goal sort of is there, the cop's behind it, and the ball's to my right, and I'm sort of falling backwards. And I just hooked it too far and pulled it, and it agonisingly went past the post, I think, a couple of inches. We could have been 1-0 up after 20 minutes. with yours truly notching, which I didn't do very often. I think it was about one in 10, something like that. But it was a crazy experience. Obviously, stood watching Mickey's goal at the back of the net again in slow motion. You're pinching yourself. You're thinking. You spend that time then as a even playing. You're thinking, we're going to go hybrid. I can't believe we're going to play Arsenal away. Oh my God, this is going to be amazing. Going, oh Steve, what are you doing? Fucking gone and scored the winner, man. And spoilt it all. And you can imagine Bryce Griffiths thinking, oh my God, Steve, you just
done us out of a couple of $100,000,
hundreds of thousands of pounds in gate receipts. And but I don't think obviously nobody have had it any other way. It made world news at the time. And Wacko became a sort of an overnight icon, didn't he, worldwide, along with Mickey, obviously. And it was bizarre. I'll never forget sort of me and Phil Hardy have got in after the game and we're like, oh my God, we can't believe what we've just done. Are we going back out again? Yeah, come on. We went straight back out after the final whistle. And I think a lot of fans had come onto the pitch. We got off, but we just thought, you know what, let's go back out again. We went back out again. I got to sort of the cop, and my best mate from school jumped out on me, a lad called Lee Bellis. He was sort of, police were sort of obviously, keeping people off the pitch and that, but he jumped over and Steward came to separate. I said, don't worry, he's my mate. You know, what a moment to spend with one of your best schoolmates after just beating Arsenal. Crazy times.
And I think, if anything, the fact that you put it just wide was probably a good thing, because it's like if we'd have scored that early, then they might have pulled their finger out a bit more than Arsenal. So you did us a favour there, Gaz, I think.
Who knows? Yeah. Nice way to put it, Andy.
But it was what was that feeling like? I touched on it then about like the season before that, where we came bottom of the fourth division, but it was we only got saved from dropping out to the conferences it would be then because of the whole rejig of the football pyramid, where they wanted more teams and more divisions, and then the year after that would be the Premier League had formed as well. So what was that feeling like of coming bottom of the football pyramid, the professional football pyramid, but not getting relegated? And like, when did you realise that we might come bottom here, but we're going to be safe?
I think we all got onto what Flinney obviously now was thinking, and he blooded a lot of us in that season, and gave as much game time to those younger players, as possible, and used it to good effect. You look back and now and you realise how lucky we were to have somebody like Brian in charge of everything. With the building of the building of the training ground, and moving from somewhere like Lex or the old rugby club and having a base in the sort of later 90s. Yeah, really bright manager, Flinney. So, at the time, I think, we were fortunate to sort of get through that period where you finish bottom of the league and you think, wow, it hurt at the time. I think, anyone that's played any kind of level, you finish bottom of the league and you think, it did hurt, which I think is a good thing as well, because again, we were all wired to, I'm going to prove people wrong. Phil was wired that way. Flinney knew that Steve Watkin was wired that way, and he knew he had a group of young lads at the time, I think, that would go out and drive through brick walls for him and the club, and at the same time have some kind of motif for proving to Wrexham fans, to fans of other clubs, that we aren't at the bottom of the league team. It hurt. So I think we went out that next season and we wanted to prove people wrong, and lo and behold, it worked. If you look at it that way, I think it worked in terms of we had a good group of youth boys that came in, and as I say, band of brothers, but we also had a real good set of established pros in that early 90s who were a band of brothers as well. Immediately Tony Humes came in, Mel Pedgick, that kind of player took the club onto the next level, if you like, for me. We had some really wry signings. Jimmy Case, I'll never forget coming in, and obviously Mickey, Alan Kennedy. Who can say in a lower league club they've played with these types of, Alan Kennedy, the Champions League winner, the old European Cup winner, Joey Jones, double European Cup winner, I think Alan is as well. Jimmy Case, players that you think, you're pinching yourself almost that these players are coming to the club, but We were obviously doing something right then, right the way from Flinney all the way down. And the momentum then through that season starts to build, and we had some really good loan signings. Obviously, coming in, Mike Lake was fantastic that year. It didn't work out for Mike, unfortunately, after that. But Eddie Youds, I remember coming in 1990, 91 to keep us up. I think it might have been 1991, to keep us up. Flinney was bright, mate. He looking back, some of the things he did for the club, I look at him now as some kind of saviour, which I'm sure a lot of fans do as well. But yeah, I think that was sort of the thinking at the time. I think I probably explained it quite reasonably well there.
Very well, because it was almost like a, I guess, short-term hit for long-term gain, where he played those youngsters in the bottom of the league season, give them game time with the view of, well, in a couple of years, these lads are they'll have had 40, 50, 60, 70 games under their belt. And it would show, obviously, with the promotion in 92-93, the sealed 2-0 away Northampton, Gary Bennett with 2, as Benno seemed to have it. He got a few goals that season.
He was that sort of, he was the catalyst that brought it all together, the last piece of the jigsaw. Andy Marriott obviously signing as a fantastic keeper, and you've hit the nail on the head there, really, about so many games being played. I think, but by that time, you probably me, Phil, Stevie Watkin, Wayne, amongst others, we probably were closing in on 100 games, between 50 to 100 games, each. It's a lot of experience for boys that hadn't hit 20. If you look at that now, you can't remember the last time. Maybe Robbie Evans was the last one that came through of our own, if you like, that got to sort of 100 games ish. But we all had it, and there was probably 5-6 lads in the team over that season that had it. And then John Cross came in.
Yeah.
Again, and another player that what a left foot John had, and could have been our first £1 million player. Brian Hughes.
That was it, yeah. Funny saying with John Cross, he was going to be our first £1 million player, and then it didn't quite happen. I think it was York he went to in the end when he finally left. I think.
Not 100% sure. I still see him now. He works for. I haven't seen him for a while, sorry, but I did bump into him a lot when I was working for the Flintshire County Council as like the development officer there. He was he lived in around the Mould area, but had gone into paramedic, so he fully trained up paramedic, and I bumped into him quite a bit. He'd be parked up, and his lad then started working for Flintshire, so I used to see quite a bit of John. But yeah, he was another one, names that sort of spring to mind. But yeah, we were very lucky. Yeah, we were very lucky to have people that put the trust in us. And that sort of title-winning squad, not title-winning, promotion-winning squad. I think then, was a real good mix of, them older pros that knew what they were doing, would nurture us as younger players, and the young players were sort of experienced by then. It makes a good mix, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it will be that 1993 season, the promotion season. What was, I guess these days, the kids would call it scenes. The Northampton game where Benno gets his 2, and it basically seals a promotion there. And I believe the number, it was before I started going to away games. I believe the number was like 4,500 Wrexham fans, I think is the kind of genuine figure of who made the trip to Northampton, which is a fair old trek. What was that like, that whole, just, I guess, the atmosphere there, seeing that many Wrexham fans away, Benno getting his 2 goals, realising like, that's it, we're going up here?
Yeah, again, a bit surreal, I suppose, but we'd worked hard for it all season. There can't be something that you can't look forward to. And Mark Morris was in goal at the time. Mark had been fantastic again through all that season. Another one I should mention, really, that sort of set the tone for us. On the night, I mean, Northampton sort of pummeled us a little bit. They were a decent side at the time. Mark made some fantastic saves, kept us a clean sheet, and then we grew into the game. I think the nerves sort of started to go. I watched it the other day. I remember Crossy running down the right. I think Benno picked the ball up centrally, played the ball out to Crossy. Crossy took their left back on. Keeper parries it. Benno's there to put the rebound in. The lasting memory I've got then is Benno peeling off to the left-hand side to the Wrexham fans. The Wrexham fans sort of piled over the walls, people coming onto the pitch. Benno peeling off towards their fans, going like this. So he'd gone like that to the Wrexham fans, going nice little things. And then the second handball, he came, and then it's like, what the referee blows his whistle and goes, you know, what are you doing, Cathy? Like, and Benno's like surprised. He's just been going the V's up at their fans. But it's just crazy things like that stick in your mind. The final whistle went. I remember all their players trying to sprint off. I think I just went down. I think I put my head in my hands and just thought, wow, we've done it. You know, we've got promotion. And the next thing, then there's a sea of fans sort of, you know, and you get knocked around, and you didn't mind any of it though. Like players were on people's shoulders. Mark Morris throwing champagne over his head. Steve Hawking, I remember being on someone's shoulders. Carl. And then bits of kit go missing, so Benno's walking off in like his slip and one sock. His bills and one sock. I think his boots had gone and his whole kit had gone. And then you just get in the change rooms, pandemonium, isn't it? You know, them type of things, as you can imagine. And the trip back was all right as well. So you're quite happy you got to get 2.5 hours on a bus then, because you just, you know, you're promoted. And I think we're straight into Bob Scott's, mate, when we got back.
Oh, right, okay. So I'm going to guess you probably picked up a few crates of beer for the journey back, and then,
yeah, but, you know, getting back for whatever time it was, like 11, 10 o'clock at night. And yeah, brilliant, great days. And I don't think obviously you paid for a drink that night. You know, Wrexham fans were then starting to pile into these places and that were there on the day, and the streets were packed. And wow, you know, what an experience to go through, and very humbled to be able to reflect on it.
Yeah, I think even now, like most of that team, if they're ever seen out in Wrexham on a night out, they still don't have to pay for a drink. I remember being in the I was trying to think where it was. Not the Horse and Jockey. The Welsh Fusiliers a couple of Christmases ago, and Stevie Watkins was in there, and it was just like drinking for free. It was just anyone that saw him was like, "Steve, do you want a beer?" And then talk about what obviously Arsenal or whatever, other promotion or anything. It was just like, right, pints lined up sort of thing. I
did the same. If I saw Stevie walking out, I'd do the same. I bumped into him in Cardiff one night after a Welsh game and bought him a pint. Never get one back though.
No, tight like that, is he?
Like accountant to me.
Oh, right, okay, that explains it then. That period, the whole time you were at Wrexham, there was like so many great centre midfielders, and obviously there's only 2, sometimes 3 spots, because we had that spell under Flinney where we were playing kind of 3 centre mids and just 1 winger for a bit. But what's that like, the kind of competitive side of it? I mean, is it just like that friendly competition when there's like yourself and there's Wayne or Brian Hughes comes through, or Rooster comes back, or you've got Jimmy Case before that, Peter Ward comes in, Dave Brammer, Mike Lake, Mark Wilson on loan from Man United, Darren Ferguson. I mean, does that just kind of force you to raise your game then?
Yeah, and again, I think Flinney knew how we were wired there. That I was very much, I'll show you what I can do. And I think we were all like that. And that what that does then is you just have 8 or 9 players over 2 or 3 years. You just throw them the shirts. You throw the 3 shirts and go, right, go and scrap it out. And in a way, I mean, scrap it out is show me what you can do in the reserve, show me what you can do in training. If you're not in the team, if you're in the team, show me what you can do on a match day. I just think it's healthy for competition, obviously within the squad. But yeah, when you're up against sort of one year, I think Jimmy Case, Mickey Thomas, and Ian Rush the following year, you know, them days, all you can look back off and pinch yourself that you've played with those types of players. But it's always healthy for a squad, healthy for a team. You know, fortunately, I think the whole time I was there, throughout Wrexham, we had some really good players come into central midfield, and that I believe got the best out of me probably as well. As a player, you like to think that you get the best out of them by what you do. I think the unselfish side of the game is underestimated. You know, you're making runs for other people, and they would make runs for you. And there was a very good team ethic, you know, team ethos at the time. We always used to put the team first, which I think is you know, it's really important. That's probably in me as a coach now, and if I ever go and manage again, I think you always put the team first. I think that's goes without saying, unless you threw on goal, it's the 90th minute, and you got the keeper to beat. That's the only time you would put the team first.
And then it's you time. That's it. That's your moment to shine.
And Benno, that was his job, and that's what he did for us. And you know, you do an extra 2K a game if you knew Benno was going to score. You know, that's how we looked at it behind him. And He looked at it that I suppose those boys are going to work hard, they're going to get on the ball, and they've got a little bit of quality to put him in. All of that linking together, I think, made for a good side.
Yeah, and speaking of Benno, and Benno obviously got a lot of pens, won a lot of pens, some questionably, should we say?
That man could, he loved going down the box, didn't he? But he was he was an expert at it, wasn't he? An expert at it, and it got to the point, right, where you'd put him in, and he'd line defenders up, and you knew what he was going to do, and you end up looking at your teammates going, he's going to fucking do it. He's going to do it. And lo and behold, he goes down. Defenders sort of going, what? I haven't touched him. Refs going pen. And then all you can see is Ben walking to get the ball. He's going to take it. And he's going to put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
I don't remember one penalty that sticks in my mind where he missed.
Yeah.
Everything that hit the back of the net with him, which I was just a pleasure to play with. But more importantly, again, a fantastic human being and a brilliant bloke to have. That was, as I say, last piece of the jigsaw that lifted us all and, took us ultimately all to promotion.
Yeah, and one of the pens he did score will come in the FA Cup game against Ipswich. Kieran Durkin, kids would score that beast of a volley just from on the near post. Just one of those when you hit it, you're thinking that's a bit of an angle on it. But what a game! That was kind of like the next. I guess the next step of like the glory days after that was that FA Cup run with that, and then the Man United game away, where again, Kieran Durkin put us 1-0 up after like 10, 15 minutes. Meggs and Peter Schmeichel at Old Trafford to just stun the whole crowd. But that, I guess that would wake Man United up, but it was a hell of a game with 5-2, and Johnny Cross gets his goal towards the end, which I'm not sure it took a slight deflection or not, but it looked good on the telly anyway. It still looks good to this day. But what was it like to be involved in those FA Cup games? Having obviously you've been involved in the Arsenal game a couple of years prior, then the West Ham game after that, the West Ham game in the replay. In fact, I believe you even set up Lee Jones in that. That was it in the West Ham game. You got the assist there.
Yeah, we were 2-1 down, obviously from going into the last 10 minutes of the game. I think we had a bit of pressure in our own final third inside our own 18-yard box. Andy Thack was over that way. Mark Sartori, who I haven't mentioned yet, what a man Carlo was, and Andy, both again great men. And we ended up winning the ball. Came out to me. I turned, so I'm sort of corner of the 18-yard box now in our own half, and took a couple of touches. And me and Lee had this sort of telepathic. He knew I had a sort of a long strike in me or a long pass, whatever you want to call it, a ping. And I knew he'd out sprint anyone he was up against at the time. He'd whip it at the time. And I remember Steve sort of come short, and I could see Lee going. They had that sort of movement between them, and they had a really great mix up front. So I've sort of I've seen Lee make a run. I've seen Tim Breaker sort of on his heels. Yeah. I think there is a percentage of it's going to go through to McCloskey or not. It's going to go through and out of play. Or it's going to go short, at least into Steve Watkin. But it came off my foot like a one iron, and it covered a lot of ground quickly, should we say. And before I knew it, Lee's in on goal. And you sort of think as a player, I remember thinking, again, slow motion, you're sort of rubbing your eyes and going, is he in or not? I can't quite make out. And next thing, the crowd are going up, and oh my God, we've equalised, we're taking them back to the racecourse, and we peeled away to the right, if I remember rightly, and all the Wrexham fans were sort of at the top in that main stand and behind the goal. Rushy had obviously, Wayne Phillips now obviously had scored the equaliser, I think, to make it one each in the first half, second half, that end. So again, you're just pinching yourself. You can't believe you're sort of in a position where you're 2-2 against the Premier League side, and it's just like holding on now. You got to hold on, and thankfully we had players like Mark behind us. I think Mel Pedgic might have played centre back, Tony might have played centre back, honestly can't remember. But Andy Thack, for a lot of you knew that they were going to hang on for you in the last sort of 10 minutes of the game. So I think we brought him back to the racecourse then, and that was the Tim Breaker incident, wasn't it, with Carl? And centre back scored for them. I can't remember, from a corner. I can't remember what his name is. 1-0, wasn't it, at home, the replay, unfortunately for us. But that sticks in my mind. Tim Breaker bringing Carl down, what would have been so different. I think if Breaker had gone off, the ref had done his job on the night, and who knows where that had taken us to then. But that's the fullest I've ever seen the Cop. Was that night, that West Ham at home. I can't remember what the crowd was, maybe 14 plus, but as a player, you just look at that, it was just heads. There must have been maybe 8,000 in the Cop, out of a 14 attendance. But yeah, because obviously at the time we had like you mentioned before, the only the three sides to the ground, didn't we? There was the one side of the ground was closed, so yeah, it was a real packed night, but a disappointing one for us. I think walking off the pitch where we feel we could have had more out of it, and the FA Cup run was over for another year, but I think we came good again. Was it the year after with Ipswich?
94, 95. So what would be like 2 or 3 years after that anyway? But yeah, 94, 95 was the Ipswich, the 2-1 at the racecourse. Then off to Old Trafford, which would be the 5-2. It's what is it with, because I mean we go on in 96, 97 to have that great run to the quarterfinals. We go and beat Middlesbrough a couple of years after that. What is it with Wrexham in the FA Cup, do you think? It just seemed like we had that spell where, especially in the 90s, where it was just like, I don't know, it just, whenever it was that supposed underdog thing where, okay, we're the lower league team against a big team, we're going to get steamrolled, that's how it goes. That wouldn't happen.
No, I think we had the three staff we had, like I'm talking Joey, Flinney and Kev now, were such a good mix. So Joey was your never say die. You had that in you as a player. Flinney was your technical sort of midfielder that would give you bits of information which would get you out of certain situations and you'd work the opposition out. And Kev was a really bright forward who would be able to sort of think how to open teams up. So, between the three of them, they were really good staff and gave us really good information, and going up and facing that team. And I think Joey was probably the biggest influence because of that backs up against the wall before you even went into the game. You're all obviously the underdog, but you know what he was like. He'd roll your sleeves up. He'd come and before a game, like he'd always sit you down and he'd come either behind you or in front of you. He'd rub your shoulders, right? He'd start listening. He'd go, "Guys, I had a dream last night." And if you're rubbing your shoulders, "I had a dream. You score in the first half." So he'd always sort of build you up in that way, come and rub your shoulders or something. And then 2 minutes later, he seems doing the same to someone else. He's just trying to, that was his own way. And yeah. I think in that manner where he'd make it sort of personal to you, and you've got this European Cup winner giving you his own time. Yeah, as I say, you just go and run through brick walls for people, and especially being local as well, I think, and understanding the club and understanding the town. Being a working man town, and what the Wrexham fan is out there that will work 9 to 5. They come, they pay their money on Saturday. Why wouldn't you give anything but 100%? So that's probably why we got a lot of success. I think through the 90s is that the way that we were wired as players and people, and the staff we had around us.
Yeah, I've heard the stories with Joey as well, but in the tunnel of "Don't look at him, don't look at him, don't look at him, don't look at him." That was the
all night. Being all night telling you stories of Joey. Yeah, but what a bloke, what a man to have around the club. But again, landed no lad that did well, and he's probably exactly the same at Liverpool, winning the European Cup and coming off the pitch as he was at Wrexham, going to Lincoln away and driving the bus and taking all the the YTs up there. And I can't sort of stress enough, and you probably hear it off everyone what an influence he was on us as players and people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Wrexham legends, yourself included. There's a lot of players synonymous with the club, with the ground, with the town. But I mean, when it comes to Mr. Wrexham, Joey Jones is the one with that name. That's Joey.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Wrexham.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost get offended when I hear somebody calling anybody else Mr. Wrexham FC. Or certainly even, in my eyes, it's Mickey and Joey are legends. Yeah. Dixie's a legend. Flinney's a legend in my eyes. Kev Reeves are legends. I look at us as players who, we were very lucky to represent, the club throughout as long as we did. And you ask any of the Steve Watkins of the world, Neil Roberts, Phil Hardy, the same. They're legends. We're players. We were lucky to have lived it. Lived every fan's dream. I suppose that's how I look at playing for Wrexham. Is that I'm a Wrexham fan even now, and what would I give now to be able to run out on the pitch and represent the club? Is it goes without saying, doesn't it?
I think that sort of mentality is why the fans appreciated yourself and those players you listed so much, and also why you had the success you did, because you saw it as, I guess, a privilege in a way to be playing for Wrexham, and you you treated it as that. I've got this chance. This is amazing. I'm not going to.
Job. You can't. I couldn't look back at that and think it was a job. Yeah, sure. You obviously paid as a professional footballer, but it was more than going out and being a pro, because it was Wrexham Football Club that you were doing it for. And a lot of people say, why didn't you go on to play at a higher level? And I just I probably could have been a little bit more consistent if I look back at myself as a player. And I wanted to do it at Wrexham. I wanted to play in the Premier League with Wrexham. I wanted to play higher with Wrexham. Unfortunately, we were so close that one season at Southend. I heard you're talking to was it Neil or Macker about it in the recent podcast there, the game at Southend away, where I think we lost out on goal difference. And now you mentioned it was so many four teams had finished on the same points and we missed out on goal difference. Who knows if we'd have gone up that year? Was it 96?
96, 97, that one. There was the... No, 97, 98. It was 96, 97 was we missed out on the playoffs by, I think it was 4 points. And then 97, 98 was the year when it was goal difference. We missed out on the playoffs. And it was the Southend where there was the wait at the end to see what had gone on. And
I remember standing. It was Mark Wilson's chat with Mark Griffiths, was it? I think.
Yeah, the game at the weekend.
Podcast, sorry, it was at half time the weekend, but Mark Wilson played in that game. What a great midfielder as well, and great to listen to him. And like you said, we sort of got together on Zoom a couple of times recently through work. But who knows if we'd have gone up that year? It had been sort of League One football for us as it was back then, and who knows where that led. I think we really had the momentum then. We built a training ground, I think, the year after, and who knows where we'd be as a club now if we'd have gone up that year. But football, bloody hell, mate.
I know. nice Sir Alex reference in there. Which I guess dovetails nicely into, we kind of skirted over it, but the 5-2 FA Cup game, Man United at Old Trafford. Obviously there was the Cup Winners' Cup game in 1990 or whenever it was. But for you to go back then as very much the senior pro, the regular in that side, to then go back to Old Trafford, how was that walking out? And especially, I guess, when Kizza put us 1-0 up as well.
I was a lot more aware by then. I think it was in my mid-20s by then, maybe 24, 25 maybe, but a lot more aware, trying to enjoy the lead into the game, all the stuff on that you can watch on TV. Still with your mind very, very focused on the job in hand, obviously, and this is the biggest challenge now, obviously, isn't it? You're going to United at Old Trafford with the team that they had. I think they'd won a few titles by then, if I remember rightly. That sort of that was the first year taking over, wasn't it? 96. It was earlier than that, wasn't it? It was 90. Was it 95?
1993 they won the first one, then they won 93, 94. Then it was Blackburn.
It was 86 to go, wasn't it? Obviously, and then early 90s, they won their first titles with McClare and the fledglings coming through, obviously, wasn't it? It was that sort of side we played in.
But I think it was Phil Neville's debut was that FA Cup game.
That's right, yeah. So it was that era. So Giggs, I think, had been established by then. Scholes, the older of the fledglings, were sort of established and got games under their belts. But from our perspective, I think we still believed in ourselves. Most teams will go there and think, let's just keep score down. But we really felt that we could, give them a real good competitive game. Remember working on it in the week. Flinney again was bright enough to sort of look at, obviously their strengths they had the strengths there left, right and centre, but their main strengths, we worked on sort of nullifying that and then, counter-attacking, and we had some decent pace in the side as well on either side. And Kizza, if I remember rightly, I might have started on the left, but being right-footed he was happy at the time for him to do both. I think Crossy, the same, was very left-footed, but sort of would be happy on the right. So if we had a corner or whatever, they'd stay where they were, and then over the period, next 3 or 4 minutes, then they'd go back, So there was times when they'd be playing as inverted wingers, or a righty on the left and a lefty on the right. But I vividly remember now receiving the ball mid sort of their half, sort of level with the post. Ince comes out. I sort of dodged to my right, went to my left, and I'm on the outside of my right foot now, and there's a gap opened up. And I think it was Dennis Irwin had glanced at Kizza And just as he glanced there and made a step to his right, Kizza made a run in behind him. And I've sort of slid outside of my foot, slid the ball in. It wasn't a difficult sort of pass to play, but Kizza's in. I remember looking and glancing at Wacko sort of making a run at the far post. I'm thinking, fucking, I'm going to score here. A real chance to score and go 1-0 up. No, it's not going to happen. Oh my God, we've scored, you know. And I remember the obviously the Stretford end behind it as it was back then, just, you know, silenced.
Yeah.
We peeled off. We'd agreed, and I'm going to take credit for this. We'd agreed right before the game to do like a Wayne's World type celebration.
Yeah, they are worthy.
Yeah, it might have been one or two of us, but so we've said, like, if we score, you've got to peel off wherever it is into the corner of the pitch and just stand there. And the rest of the group will come and Wayne's Worldy, we called it at the time. So Kiz has put it through Schmeichel's legs, hasn't he? You're thinking, oh my God, what is going on? What is, you know, you're almost pinching yourself, running over to the corner of the pitch and looking at the Stretford end. It's dead. I peeled back and looked at our end, and it's pandemonium. There's plastic glasses going up in the air, flags, scarves. Kizza gets into the corner and just, you know, milks it up. God rest his soul. It was, you know, what a legacy the man left. And I think 5 or 6, maybe more of us have got down at his feet and we're giving him a Wayne's World. So I remember looking at the scoreboard. You know, you're 1-0 up, and then it's a case of they got into the game and. I think Irwin scored the first.
Yeah, he got the equaliser, Dennis.
Corner. We held on. There was a few good saves. I think Andy was with us by then. Andy Marriott in goal, made a few good saves, and the pressure was mounting before half time. And I think I could have closed him down better, if I'm honest. I look at the footage and think, that's Dennis Irwin. You can't give him that amount of time. The ball sort of bounced out to him, and before I've had a chance to sort of go and press him, he just volleyed it into the far corner, and you know, maybe we could have done a little bit more about it, maybe not. But even at what, you know, 1 each, is it 1 each going in half time or 2-1? I honestly can't remember. Apologies, the memory's not what it used to be. But yeah, obviously they took a good stronghold in the side then, and I think they, you know, Giggs, at least Sharp it was, if I remember rightly, at left back. Was obviously Golden Boy at the time, as well as Giggs. Yeah. They brought Giggs on. I'm sure Scholes came on, and they just had players left, right, and centre. If I remember rightly, was what was his name? Danny. Oh, it's gone.
Danny.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? What position in the pitch are you thinking?
Like winger for United. Used to play for Southampton. 3 brothers as well.
Oh, Danny Wallace.
Danny Wallace, yes. Yeah. He threw the old "how much are you on?" I caught him for a free kick near the near side. You know, I remember watching it on Match of the Day or whatever. I caught him in a free kick, and the footage shows him sort of going like that. And I said, I don't know what he's saying at that point. He asked me how much I was on. You know, I'm earning thousands and thousands. Yeah. What are you on? How much are you? A couple £100 a week. Yeah. Slaughtered me in that moment. Yeah, but Danny Wallace was on the right foot, if I remember, on the day, and. You know, amongst others, they were a fantastic side, and we were very proud to come out of there, even scoring, never mind scoring 2. One of 4 teams, I think, that year that went there and scored 2, if I'm right.
Yeah.
I've heard so far, or I've heard since, should I say. But yeah, you try and, so you finish the game then, and you try and go up into the bar, and, you know, these players are walking in, and they're mixing with you, they're just asking how you are, and they're sort of asking about your families and that, where you're from. And I sort of knew Giggs from the Welsh squads again. Yeah. So, you know, he said hello and how's things and caught up. And it was unbelievable. Again, unbelievable experience, and fortunate to experience it with the players I went through it with. Yeah, that's the way I look at it with.
Yeah, and if anybody that went to, we did an evening with hosted at the Fat Boar. Just, it feels like forever ago. It was just before the pandemic hit, and it was myself sitting down with Gary Bennett and Cole Connolly. And for anybody there, Benno told a great story about the night before that, which cannot be repeated on this. If you were there, you'll know the story involving a certain centre half of ours, which I'll tell you when we get finished after this, guys, about that one. But you mentioned Wales there and Giggsy. You got, like you said, you got 8, 9, 10, 11 under 21 caps. I think it was a B cap. And you got, if I remember rightly, there was a call up to the senior squad, because this was a time, again, it feels like another lifetime ago, that Wrexham were getting players in and around the Welsh senior squad, but we get
Yeah.
either in the squad or on standby, or the B team. There'd be yourself, there'd be Steve Watkin, there'd be Wayne, Andy Marriott got a couple of caps, Darren Brace, Neil Roberts to go on to get some caps as well.
Andy Marriott, yeah.
Yeah. So how was that like when you got the call up to? Was it Bobby Gold in charge when you got your call up? Yeah.
Yeah, Terry Gorth actually was first through the 2021s. He was always sort of in charge with the 21s games, and then he went and Bobby Gould took over. So my first few caps were sort of not under Terry, obviously. And Mike Smith was in charge, and Jimmy Shuffle was in charge at the time as well of the 21s. But latterly then Bobby Gould took over, and one of his ideas was to go around and play friendlies against the Connacht League teams. I suppose at the time it was the Welsh Prem teams.
Yeah.
So we played a friendly at Real. We met at the Post House. Post House roundabout, stayed in the International in Chester. You know, it was obviously the hotel's unbelievable, and we made our way over to Real. So you're in like a big squad now of 30 plus players, or 30-ish players, should I say. So his idea was to play the first team first half, and then the reserves sort of second half. So I came on second half. At half time, it was a complete like change of 11 players. So we went out second half, and I think sort of the players at the time, if I remember rightly, like trying to think now who would have come on second half. Steve Jenkins from Swansea, I think. Tony Roberts, who's obviously the Welsh keeper coach now. Tony Roberts would have come on potentially second half. Nathan Blakes, Lee Jones. I think one or two of the first team stayed on for a bit, and then two other subs came on after that. But cut long story short, I think that it was real. I was talking to a colleague about it. Alan Bickerstaff, I worked with, played for Real that night. Tony Lee, who was at Wrexham as well, Togger, was playing for Real that night as well. So his idea was to sort of go around and play those friendlies. Bobby Gould that actually made a bit of a, should we say, a mockery of it, but he came on himself. He must have been.
God.
He's 50s, but he came on the last 10 minutes, and he's thinking, wow, he's just. But I went to close someone down in midfield. I went over the top of them, and I landed on sort of, when you see a keeper come out and catch the ball and they land on their hands and their face.
Yeah. And
you go, oh my God, the body comes over. That happened to me. And I played the rest of the game, but I came off. I was in a brace straight after the game, due to go into I think it was Holland, due to go with the squad to face Holland in a World Cup qualifier, which was unbelievable news sort of at the time. And I had to pull out because I was obviously in a neck brace for the following 4 weeks. I really did some damage to my neck at the time. Excuse me. But that was probably the closest I got to a full cap or a full call up, was playing in that that friendly, and then being in and around the first team, just fly into countries, and we'd sort of play on the night before, whether it be a Tuesday night and they play on the Wednesday night, whatever. You're just in the same hotel. You're mixing with them. You pass them in corridors. A lot of the times we trained together as well, the 21s and the first team, just so we could emulate what Poland or Romania were going to do as a 21s team, just walkthroughs, that type of thing. Great days. The story I think around Gary Speed, obviously being a D-side lad, was captain of the 21s at the time. So my first call up with the 21s, I remember Cliff coming. It was at dinner time, I think. We got a call that someone had pulled out, and we're going to send you over. You joining the 21s tonight. This was my first time. Cliff drove me over from the racecourse straight away. Arrived sort of dinner time at Mollington Bannister, out just on the outskirts of Chester. We were due to play England at Prenton Park. This would have been 1989, maybe 90. But I got to the Mollington Bannister, I'm shaking. I'm nervous. I'm just a lad from Connacht, really, really worried about going into a squad. Gally Speed met me at the door. Had been a captain for D-side primary schools, and he was Queen's Ferry, I was Connacht Key. But he met me at the door, took me in. Don't worry about anything. I'll show you to your room. I'll get you to meet the lads when we have a team meeting. Took me around all the boys. All the boys made me feel really welcome straight away, and you were just, you felt welcome within seconds of being in his company. He didn't have to do it, one of them sort of moments as a captain of you think, you know what, if I get a chance to sort of run through brick walls for you, I will. And that's, I think you've really got to be, in life, I think when you meet people like that, there's no other way to sort of behave on a pitch for them. You know, you do anything for them. And Flinny, Joey, Kev were all like that. Gary Speed was another one. Just, you know, when people lead by example and you just want to do your best for them. So, yeah, you know, God rest his soul. I'll never forget that. And great to meet him later on in life when his boy came through and played for our regional squads at sort of 2009, 10, I think. Ed came into our squads. I was coaching in our regional boys then, and good to see him sort of, you know, obviously bringing Ed in, and good to catch up on that. And then lo and behold, you know, what happened. And, you know, Osh, who was technical director at the time of the trust, was sort of took over with eventually with Chris. Obviously Raymond Fahim was involved at the time as well. But yeah, a real difficult period for Welsh football, obviously, but yeah, culminated in the Euros, which we, you know, I suppose, which we all remember fondly as well.
Yeah, a hell of a tournament. So many great memories from the Euros. From the just, yeah, I think that one of the happiest I've ever been in my life was that Sandbox header. Was just because it's like there's that. Not only are you happy because it's a third, but there's that like realization of there's no time to cock this up, sort of thing. As in, it was. Oh, it's not. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And then in Wrexham, we had the Stereophonics play the race course the day after, and it was just it was just a brilliant weekend. Yeah, all my mates had some of my mates had stayed at mine the night before, and we barely slept after the game. And then it was just wake up on the beers again. For the Stereophonics, the sun was out. There was Wales shirts everywhere. The band, I've goosebumps here. The band came out.
You got mine standing up now, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
your neck standing up.
What a weekend! I had to think Chris Gunter wasn't supposed to cross that ball. That was
you can cross that ball, Christopher. Was the word? Yeah.
And there we are. The first part of this two-part chat with Gareth Owen is in the books. And what a great chat it's been. And there's still so much more to come next week in the second part of this interview with Gaz. But I mean, for those of us that saw Gareth Owen play, what a player he was for so long, for 12 years as a pro for Wrexham, but involved in so many pivotal key moments, those big memories, those great memories. Gareth Owen was there front and centre. But I mean, first and foremost, just what a nice fella, what a lovely fella, what a genuine, sincere bloke. And he is a fan. He is that fan. It's I said it in the introduction, and it's cheesy a little bit, but it's infectious to see how much Gareth Owen cares. And that's, as fans, that's what you want to see when you're watching. You can have the best player in the world on a pitch, but if they don't give a toss, it's like you just want somebody that puts a shift in, regardless of whether they're having a good day or a bad day. You want someone that cares and gives a toss. And Gareth Owen, God bless him, wearing his heart on his sleeve. Yeah, what a man, what a player. And just part two is even better. And his sleeve does come into question because there's a question about getting the Wrexham tattoo. But that's getting ahead of myself here. But yeah, part two, there's still plenty more to talk about. There's Gaz's final days at Wrexham. There's his testimonial against Manchester United. There's his move to Doncaster, his move then to the Welsh leagues and into the coaching side of things, and where he works now as I guess technical advisor. I don't know the exact title of it, but it's a really cool role that he's got, overseeing so much good stuff going on in Welsh football. And we'll talk about all of that in part two. And also he picks his Wrexham 11. And given the amount of time he was at Wrexham and the amount of quality players he was in and around, it's an interesting 11. What was, for me, most fascinating about Gaz's Wrexham 11 is seeing his mind go to work with the tactical side of things, with the technical side of things, of looking at, well, he can go there and doing this, and he almost like you play Football Manager. I realize that most of you listen to this on the podcast. I'm doing things with my hands, so yeah, that's irrelevant. But yeah, part two coming up next week. Before we go though, now I'm going to leave you with a song that Gaz wrote called "Roll Back the Years," which, Jesus Christ, it brings a smile to the face. It brings goosebumps to the arms, the neck, whatever. In my case, the mullet, because I'm desperate for a haircut after lockdown. But yeah, just a song about the highs and the lows of Wrexham over the years. And I mean, hopefully, it feels like we're on the cusp of a high, of a genuine high, and hopefully that is the case. But this song and the video that Gaz has put together for this, yeah, just so many great memories and some bad memories again. But I don't know, just seeing people like Jacko in there and Scarfy. Jacko, who my first game ever in the Kop. Well, for all of us, for anybody who was a similar age to me or a couple of years even older than me, that first time you go in the Kop and you hear this bellowing, belting voice, and you're like, "Who's this guy?" And you look around and you come to know it's this fella called Jacko. And yeah, just to see him including this video, and Scarfy and so many legends of Wrexham on the pitch and off the pitch. It's a brilliant touch from Gaz. It's a really great song, and it stirs the emotions. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll be back next week for part 2 of this chat. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, chat, retweet, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. But here's Robot the Years.
So the news came through today of your intentions to buy something precious in our hearts, as fans would testify. You'll be one of our family, you'll be one of our team, and we'll stand there next to you, together with our dreams. Hold on to it and feel it, it belongs above. So cherish it and bleed it, 'cause it's a club we love. All of our yesterdays and all of our pain, we bathed in sunshine, but we felt the rain. All of the heartaches and all of the tears, oh, watch them fade away as we roll back the years, we roll back the years. And now the deal is done, we hope you're feeling it too. Undying, unconditional love for me and you. So we trust you'll navigate the busy roads ahead, but you felt it right to do, so you made your bed. Hold on to it, feel it, it belongs above. So cherish it and bleed it, 'cause it's a club we love. All of our yesterdays and all of our pain, we bathed in sunshine, but we felt the rain. All of the heartaches and all of the tears,
Wrexham is the name. Wrexham, Wrexham.